The Duke and the Debutantes. Chapter 1. A Dangerous Season. Lady Harriet Selwyn had perfected the art of the serene smile. It did not tremble, even when she was afraid. It did not falter, even when she heard her parents arguing through the thin walls of their rented London house. It did not waver, even under the blaze of the Ashbourne chandeliers, as she stepped into the ballroom and felt the weight of the season settle on her shoulders. Her smile was all she had left to trade. The Ashbourne spring ball glittered with light and possibility. Crystal chandeliers blazed above, silk gowns swirled in every shade of the rainbow, and laughter rose and fell like a tide. The orchestra drew a lilting waltz from their instruments, while footmen threaded through the crowd with trays of champagne. Harriet paused just inside the doors, Lydia Fairmont at her side. "Hold your head a little higher," Lydia murmured. "You look as if you mean to conquer the room." "That is the general idea," Harriet replied lightly, though her stomach was knotted tight. Neither Lydia nor anyone else suspected how close the Selwyn family stood to ruin. Lord Selwyn's investments, shipping ventures, speculative trades, risky partnerships, had crumbled in swift succession. There were creditors, letters, veiled threats. Ashdown Park, their beloved estate, was mortgaged to the hilt. Their London expenses were covered by the last of Lady Selwyn's jewels. "You must marry well," her mother had insisted, gripping Harriet's hands hard enough to hurt. "We will have no dowry to speak of, but you have beauty, charm, a respectable name. Use them, Harriet. Our survival depends on you." So Harriet had become the family's last reserve of value. She wore their remaining good silk, danced with their future in mind, and smiled as if nothing were wrong. Tonight, the ballroom buzzed with an extra current of excitement. "He's here," Lydia whispered suddenly. "Do not look at once. You will be obvious." "Oh, very well, look. Everyone else is." Harriet followed the almost magnetic shift of attention. The Duke of Loxley had arrived. He was not flamboyant or ostentatious. He did not need to be. The crowd shifted around him as he entered, granting space without quite seeming to move. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in stark black and white, he carried himself like a man accustomed to authority and not particularly impressed by it. His dark hair was neatly kept, his features strong and controlled. A widower, wealthy beyond the dreams of most of the room, and apparently immune to the charms of every eager debutante. Mothers watched him like generals tracking a valuable ally. Their daughters watched him like a distant star. Harriet, seeing him clearly for the first time, decided at once that he was far too dangerous. A duke would certainly solve every Selwyn problem at a stroke, but a duke would also see too much, expect too much, and draw too much attention. Better, surely, to aim for a kindly, wealthy gentleman of lower rank, an earl, a marquess, someone who would not invite such scrutiny. Then Loxley's gaze swept the room and stopped unambiguously on her. Harriet's breath caught. His eyes were very dark, intelligent and steady. For a heartbeat it felt as though the crowded ballroom faded, leaving only that cool, assessing scrutiny and the faintest shift of interest. He inclined his head a fraction. Then some baron intercepted him, and the moment broke. "Harriet," Lydia hissed, "he was staring at you." "He was looking in this general direction," Harriet said, lifting her chin. "Do not make more of it than it is." But her heart had begun to race, and it did not slow. She danced the first sets with the partners who had requested her, cheerful viscounts and polite barons, young men who praised her gown and spoke of their horses and offered nothing more dangerous than mild compliments. She smiled, flirted delicately, laughed when required. It was during the lull before the second waltz that she turned away from the refreshment table and almost collided with a wall of black wool and white linen. "Oh!" she gasped. A gloved hand steadied her elbow. "Forgive me," said a low, composed voice. She looked up into the eyes of the Duke of Loxley. "Your Grace," she said, dipping into a curtsy. "The fault is entirely mine." "Ballrooms are treacherous," he replied. "One must allow for the occasional collision." His tone was dry, not quite amused. He studied her face in a way that was not rude but felt thorough. "You are Lady Harriet Selwyn," he said, more statement than question. "I am," she replied. "I have heard your name frequently this season." "My condolences," she said lightly. "Society does love to repeat itself." "Repetition is tolerable," he said. "Falsehood is not." A cold thread flashed down her spine. Falsehood. Did he know? Could he possibly know? Her smile did not falter. "Then it is fortunate I have nothing to hide." His gaze sharpened for an instant, as if he'd just heard something particularly interesting. Before she could recover, the orchestra began a new waltz. Couples moved toward the center of the floor. Loxley extended his hand. "Lady Harriet, will you do me the honor?" There were only a handful of circumstances in which a lady could refuse a duke. None of them applied. "Of course," she said, placing her hand in his. The contact sent an odd awareness up her arm. His other hand settled at her waist as they turned into the opening measures. Harriet knew she danced well. She had been praised often enough. But dancing with him felt different. Less like following memorized figures, more like being guided by someone who had no doubt he would be obeyed. "You dance with assurance," he said. "As do you, Your Grace." "Loxley," he murmured. "If we are to talk at all, I would rather be addressed as a man than as a rank." She tilted her head. "We have just met." "We are waltzing," he said. "In some circles that is practically an understanding." She laughed under her breath. "Our circles are very strict indeed." He did not smile, not quite, but something eased at the corner of his mouth. "How long have you been in town?" he asked. "Since January." "And you enjoy the season?" "I enjoy the music," she said, "and the gowns. The company can be pleasant." "Pleasant," he repeated. "You do not strike me as a woman content with pleasant." "I am not sure I am in a position to demand more," she said, before she thought better of it. His grip at her waist firmed fractionally. "So you are here out of obligation?" "Aren't we all?" Her tone was light, but his sharp gaze told her he heard the truth beneath. "Some of us admit it," he said. "Most do not." The waltz carried them past chandeliers and mirrored walls, past curious faces and whispering mouths. For a few minutes, Harriet's fear receded behind the strange clarity of being so closely observed. "I knew your father a little," Loxley said, "in connection with a shipping concern some years ago. He spoke enthusiastically of Ashdown Park." The illusion shivered. "My father is fond of his ventures," she said carefully. "And is Ashdown still a place of enthusiasm?" he asked. Her throat tightened. Ashdown Park, with its leaky roof and unpaid steward, late rents and threatening letters. "We have spent much of our time in town of late," she said. "The season is very demanding." "Demanding," he repeated. The music swelled toward its close. He spun her through the final turns and released her with a bow. She curtsied, pulse fluttering. "Thank you for the dance, Your Grace." "The pleasure was mine," he replied. Then, almost as an afterthought, "I should like to call upon your family tomorrow afternoon, if Lady Selwyn will receive me." Her heartbeat stumbled. "Our household is not so grand as you might be accustomed to," she said. "I am not visiting your household," he said calmly. "I am visiting you." It was too much, too dangerous. A duke, in their threadbare drawing room, seeing everything. "My mother has been a little unwell," she said quickly. "She may not receive visitors tomorrow." "Then I shall call when she's improved," he said. I do not give up easily, Lady Harriet. And then he was gone, leaving her more unsettled than she had been since the first letter from a creditor arrived at Selwyn House. On the carriage ride home, Lady Selwyn clutched Harriet's hand. "You danced with him," her mother whispered. "The Duke of Loxley. And he means to call?" "He said so," Harriet replied. Her mother's eyes filled with mingled hope and terror. "Oh, Harriet, a duke! This could save everything." "Or ruin everything," Harriet thought, staring out at the fogged London streets. If a man like Loxley saw through her carefully maintained illusion, there would be no hiding the wreckage underneath. Chapter 2. Illusions and Cracks. Selwyn House on Brook Street had once been comfortably fashionable. Now, it was a study in compromise. Harriet moved through the drawing room the next morning, seeing it as Loxley would. The worn carpet disguised by rearranged furniture, the faded damask discreetly mended, the empty spaces on the walls where paintings had been quietly sold. "We should move that screen," she told the maid. "It will hide the crack in the hearth more neatly." Lady Selwyn sat on the edge of a chair, twisting a handkerchief. "Do you truly think he will inspect the plaster?" "He will see everything," Harriet said. "Better we show him our best version." "Perhaps we should not receive him at all," her mother whispered. "A duke, Harriet. Men like that do not marry girls with no dowry and a ruined father." "We still have our name," Harriet said, though it sounded thin even to her. "We are received in all the right houses. People still believe us solvent." "For now," her mother said. But when the knocker rattled and Mr. Crane announced his grace, Lady Selwyn rose, straightened her lace cap, and pasted on her own brittle smile. Loxley entered with gravely polite composure, bowing to Lady Selwyn and inclining his head to Harriet. His gaze passed once around the room. If he noticed the careful concealments, he gave no sign. Tea was poured, offered, accepted. Conventional pleasantries were exchanged. "I understand you spent much of your childhood at Ashdown Park," Loxley said. "Yes," Harriet said. "My father prefers the country. The parklands are very fine, and the library," she caught herself, "was very fine." "You have not been back recently?" he asked. "We have found it necessary to remain in town," she said. "It is important to make the most of the season." "Important," he repeated mildly, "particularly, I imagine, for a family with certain obligations." Her cup rattled in its saucer. "My father's business is his own," she said, more sharply than she intended. "If you have called to discuss our private difficulties, Your Grace, I must beg you not to. We are still a family, not a case study." Her mother made a faint, panicked sound. Loxley watched Harriet for a moment, then inclined his head. "You are correct. I overstepped. My apologies, Lady Harriet." The simple, straightforward apology stole some of her breath. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I only meant to say," he added more gently, "that London can be very unforgiving. If there is any way in which I might—" He stopped himself. "No, that is a conversation for another time." They moved to safer topics: music, riding, a recent pamphlet on agriculture that Harriet had read in her father's study. Loxley listened more than he spoke, his questions revealing a keen mind. He seemed particularly interested when she discussed estate management, and Harriet, forgetting herself for a few minutes, described how she would repair neglected cottages before expanding ornamental gardens, and how investing in stable tenants was wiser than chasing speculative profits. "Spoken like someone who has seen the consequences of the opposite," he said. "Must one fall out of a window to know the drop is dangerous?" she replied. One corner of his mouth lifted. "You would be surprised how many men insist on leaping." He stayed only half an hour. As he rose to go, he turned to Harriet. "May I hope for a dance or two at the Kendricks' ball on Thursday?" he asked. "You may," she answered. After he left, Lady Selwyn sagged in her chair. He admires you, she whispered. It is plain. There is interest, Harriet, perhaps even more. Interest is not a proposal, Harriet said. But her heart thudded with a dangerous, answering hope. In the weeks that followed, that hope grew. Loxley was not constantly in her company. He had estates, a dukedom, a life to manage, but he was notably present. He sought her out at balls and dinners, asked for her hand in waltzes, joined her conversations at musical evenings. He called at Selwyn House several times, never staying long enough to break propriety, yet leaving a sense of altered air in his wake. They argued about books. They discussed land and tenants. He asked her once what she would do if she found herself Duchess of a great estate. "I would be sure the cottagers are properly housed," she said after a moment, "that the steward is honest, that the schools are supported, that my husband did not loan half his fortune to unstable men with bright ideas and no principles." His brows lifted. "You speak from observation." "I speak from common sense," she said, "a quality far less common than it should be." "Do you always speak so plainly?" he asked. "When I believe it necessary," she replied. "Even when people would prefer me not to." His gaze warmed. "I find it refreshing." The ton noticed. Eyes followed them when they danced. Lady Selwyn's hands shook less. Lord Selwyn, hearing whispers of the Duke's frequent visits, began to sit straighter at breakfast. Harriet tried to ignore the creeping sense that, if she misstepped now, she would drag them all down with her. One evening, after a particularly pleasant waltz at the Kendricks' ball, Loxley guided her toward a quieter corner. "I received a letter from an acquaintance in the city," he said quietly. "He mentioned your father." Her spine stiffened. "Indeed." "There is concern," Loxley said. "Some of his ventures have failed. Debts are being called in." Harriet's smile thinned. "Gossip travels quickly." "I do not rely on gossip," he said. "I ask those whose judgment I trust. And then, if the matter touches someone I care for, I ask them directly." Care for. The words lodged under her ribs. "What precisely do you wish to know?" she asked. "Whether your father's situation places you and your mother in immediate danger," he said. "Whether there is anything that might require action." She hesitated, then decided that if he did truly value honesty, she would give it at least once more chance. "There are debts," she said. "Too many. Some men have been unforgiving. We are economizing." "Economizing," he repeated. "Dismissed servants, sold heirlooms, neglected repairs." She swallowed. "You noticed." "I notice everything," he said calmly. "It is inconvenient but useful." "And now that you know?" she asked. "Do you think me a deceiver? I go to balls. I wear silk. I accept invitations. People imagine we are as we were." "Do you stand up in the middle of a ballroom and announce your father's overreaching?" he asked. "Of course not." "Then you are not a deceiver," he said. "You are a woman protecting her family's dignity as long as she can." "That is a very generous interpretation," she murmured. "It is a realistic one," he replied, "but it raises questions that cannot be resolved in the length of a dance." He paused. "May I call on you tomorrow morning? We should speak plainly." Her heart lurched. "Yes," she said, because she saw no alternative. "Tomorrow." Chapter 3. The Secret Laid Bare. He came early before the day's post arrived, before Lady Selwyn could muster more than a faint headache and retreat upstairs. Harriet met Loxley in the drawing-room, the light slanting greyly through the windows, illuminating dust motes and strain. He stood by the hearth, hands clasped behind his back, studying the portrait of her grandfather. "Your Grace," she said, curtsying. "Lady Harriet," he replied, "thank you for receiving me." "How much do you know?" she asked without preamble. Enough to be concerned, he said. Your father's losses are substantial. There is talk of bankruptcy. Some men are less inclined to mercy than others. Yes, she whispered. We have had letters, threats. Ashdown Park may be forfeit. We are trying to hold it off. Alone, he asked. Who else have we? She said. I cannot go to a ball and ask gentlemen if they would like to invest in my father's mistakes. He watched her, expression unreadable. Your situation is serious, but it does not alter my regard for you. That admission stunned her. You knew, and you still... I still think you intelligent, principled and courageous, he said simply. Nothing I have learned contradicts that. Courageous. She felt more tired than brave. You ask to speak plainly, she said. Then so shall I. You have given me attention, more than any lady in my position has a right to expect from a duke. My mother dreams of your proposal. Her hands tightened. I would be lying if I said I had not hoped for it myself. It would save us. Marriage is not only rescue, he said quietly. It would be for me, she replied. Partly. I told myself that if you did offer, I would do all in my power to be a good duchess and worthy wife, and that would make it less mercenary. And yet, he said, watching her closely, you think your motives unpardonable. They are not romantic, she said. I did not fall in love at first sight. I saw in you a man with power and honour, and I thought, if I can win his respect, perhaps he will choose me. Perhaps he will save us. I chose my gowns to suit your known tastes. I stood where you might see me. I answered you with wit, because I saw you valued it. I have been, in short, calculating. Her voice trembled. I could not let you go further without knowing it. To her surprise, the corner of his mouth twitched. You think I believed you had no motive at all? You valued my honesty, she said. You thought me brave. If you knew how much effort I spent encouraging your interest. I would conclude, he interrupted, that you used the tools available to you to protect your family. That you were honest enough, in the end, to admit it to the one man who could hold it against you. That does not make me think less of you. Her breath caught. It does not? I am not a romantic youth, he said. My first marriage cured me of that. I know perfectly well that a woman in your position weighs her options. What matters to me is not that you chose with your head as well as your heart, but that you are able to speak openly of it. Her heart thudded painfully at the mention of his first marriage, but there was no bitterness in his tone, only weary knowledge. I had intended, he went on, to seek your father's permission today to offer for you. Had intended. The phrase landed heavily. And now, she whispered. Now, he said, I understand that you are under a pressure no woman should bear. That if I propose, you may feel unable to refuse, no matter your reservations. That is not a position I care to place you in. I want a wife who chooses me as I choose her, not merely because I am a lifeline. A painful lump rose in her throat. Then you will not offer? I will not force your hand, he replied, but my feelings are not diminished. I still respect you. I still admire you. I still believe we might build a stable, truthful marriage. I can offer you protection, partnership, constancy. His gaze held hers. But I need to know that if you accept, it is not only out of desperation. It would be both, she said honestly. I do care for you, Loxley. I like your steadiness, your mind, your refusal to flatter. But without my family's situation, I might not have been brave enough to admit that to myself, let alone to you. For a moment, something softened in his eyes at her use of his name. I am asking you, he said, to consider what you truly want, not what your parents want or society demands. If, after reflection, you wish to accept such a marriage, I will speak to your father. If you cannot, I will respect that, and still do what I can to mitigate the worst of your father's difficulties, though more quietly. You would help us, even if I refuse you? She asked, startled. Yes, he said. Why? Because I can, he replied, and because your father's creditors are eager, but not all of them fair. I do not enjoy seeing injustice, particularly done to someone I— He stopped, jaw tightening. To someone I esteem. Esteem. The word twisted in her chest. I need time, she whispered. You shall have it, he said. I will not press you. He bowed and left, leaving her alone with a decision that felt impossible. Time did not bring clarity. It brought disaster. Within days, a venomous little paragraph appeared in a society paper, hinting at a titled gentleman whose investments had turned to ash. Names were not printed, but London could put two and two together. By the time of Lady Markham's ball, the Selwyn situation was a subject for murmured speculation. Harriet knew the instant she entered the ballroom. Conversations stalled. A few acquaintances greeted her more warmly than usual, overcompensating. Others, who had courted her favour only a week prior, suddenly found reasons to look away. Lydia hurried to her side. "Oh, Harriet," she whispered. "You did not see the paper?" "No. They say your father has defaulted on a loan," Lydia said. "That bankruptcy proceedings have begun. They imply he cheated men of consequence." "Cheated?" Harriet whispered, appalled. "No, he was foolish, not wicked." "Rumour rarely bothers with such distinctions," Lydia said. The waltz began. Harriet forced herself to stand straight, to smile, to accept the partner who approached. She would not run. She would not let the vultures see her flinch. Loxley arrived shortly after. He stepped into the room to the usual subtle shift in atmosphere, but his gaze went straight to Harriet. Before he could cross to her, Lord Wentham, famous for his malice, intercepted him. Harriet watched Wentham speak, gesture toward her, smirk. Loxley's eyes turned ice cold. He replied briefly. Wentham's smirk disappeared. The Duke moved past him, expression carved from stone, and a moment later stood before Harriet. "Lady Harriet," he said, bowing. "Your Grace," she replied, head high. "May I have this dance?" he asked. She knew the room watched, knew some of them hoped he would turn away. "Yes," she said. They waltzed. His hand was steady at her waist, his expression inscrutable. "They speak of your father," he said quietly. "Ugly things." "It was inevitable," she replied. "One can only hold back the tide so long." "Are you safe?" he asked. She swallowed. "My father believes he can arrange with his creditors. I am less certain. Ashdown Park will likely be sacrificed. We may end in a small house somewhere unfashionable, if we are fortunate." "Their courage rests on your shoulders," he said. "They asked me not to fail them," she said, "yet here we are." "You have not failed," he said. "You have been set an impossible task." "If I had secured you sooner," she said bitterly, "perhaps they would say otherwise." His hand tightened slightly. "Is that all you think I am? A prize to be secured?" "No," she said quickly, "but I would be lying if I said I had not seen in you a way out." Silence stretched between them as they turned. "You once said," she whispered, "that you wished for honesty between us. Then here is mine. I cannot bear the thought that you might feel compelled to offer for me now. That the world would say you were trapped by honour, by pity, that every kindness you showed me would taste of obligation. I will not be the woman who forced a duke into marriage." "You assume," he said evenly, "that I am so weak." "I assume you are honourable," she said. "If the world believes you compromised, you will stand firm. I will not make you vulnerable to that." "What you truly fear," he said, "is not my obligation. It is your own pride. Yes, she said, because there was no point denying it. I would rather fall with what remains of it than be pitied for the rest of my life. The music drew to a close. Then you would refuse me if I offered now? He asked. Yes, she whispered. I am sorry. He bowed, controlled and distant. Good evening, Lady Harriet. He walked away. She had chosen pride, and as the night blurred around her, she realized she might have sacrificed not just security, but the only man who had ever truly seen her. Chapter 4. Choosing both. In the days that followed, ruin arrived in earnest. Notices were posted. Legal documents bearing harsh words, insolvent, bankrupt, default, arrived by the morning post. Lord Selwyn, once jovial and expansive, sat hunched in his study, staring at accounts he could not mend. Lady Selwyn wept until she had no tears left, speaking feverishly of friends who might cut them, invitations that would never come again. Harriet managed the practicalities. She dismissed servants with apologies and what small wages she could scrape together. She sorted household goods, items to be sold, items to be kept, a pitifully small pile for the future. She wrote letters to tradesmen, begging time. Ashdown Park was listed for sale. When she saw the notice in print, something inside her broke. She thought of childhood summers in the orchard, winters by the library fire, the smell of wet earth after rain. All of it reduced to a line in the paper and a price to be haggled over. You should have married the Duke, her mother said one evening, eyes red. If you had not let him slip away. Harriet did not protest. There was no point saying, I let him go because I could not bear to bind him by scandal. It would sound like vanity, not principle, to someone staring at the loss of her home. If only, was all she said. Loxley did not call. She told herself this was good. He should be free of their disaster. She told herself she had done the right thing. She did not sleep much. It was nearly a fortnight later when Mr. Crane appeared in the drawing-room doorway, unexpectedly dignified. His Grace, the Duke of Loxley, my lady. Harriet, seated at the table surrounded by bills, shot to her feet. Loxley entered. He looked more tired than she had ever seen him, a faint shadow under his eyes, a grim set to his mouth. But his gaze was steady. Your Grace, she said, curtsying. Lady Harriet, he replied, thank you for seeing me. We have little society left to occupy us, she said, striving for poise. You are unexpected, but not unwelcome. Unexpected, he echoed. I suppose I am. He looked past her at the stripped walls, the untidy piles of papers. Matters have progressed. Yes, she said, we are to sell Ashdown. My father's creditors will have their feast. And you? He asked quietly. What will become of you? We shall find lodgings somewhere smaller, she replied. We will economize further. Many genteel families live quietly on little. We will be no different. Do you truly believe that? He asked. What alternative do we have? She said. I refused the one you represented. He flinched, almost imperceptibly. You did. Have you come to tell me I was a fool? She asked. If so, you are late. I have been telling myself that for days. I have not come to call you a fool, he said. I have come to correct you. On what point? She demanded. On your assumption, he said, that I stayed away because my regard vanished. I stayed away because I was angry. Her breath caught. Angry. Yes, he said. With you, for presuming to decide my life for me. With myself, for not making my position clearer. With a society that taught you to imagine my pride lay in others' good opinion of me. You cannot pretend that opinion means nothing, she said. You are a duke, Everything you do is watched. What I will not tolerate, he said, is being ruled by gossip. You believed I would resent you if I married into your troubles, and men whispered that I had been trapped. You judged me by their standards, not mine. That offended me. She swallowed. I was trying to protect you. From what? He asked. Scandal? I have weathered worse. From the strain of your father's debts. I have resources enough to address those if I choose. From the idea that I might care for a woman who is not, by society's measure, an ideal bride. His eyes held hers. I do not need your protection, Harriet. I needed your trust. She flinched at his use of her name, at once intimate and reproachful. You said you would help us even if I refused, she said hoarsely. I did not believe you would. Then allow me to be plain, he said. In your absence, I have spoken to your father's creditors. I have purchased some of his debts, those held by the more unscrupulous men who were eager to profit from his desperation. I have instructed my solicitor to challenge questionable agreements. If handled carefully, the worst of this can yet be contained. Ashdown Park need not be sacrificed entirely. She stared at him. You have taken on my father's debts. Not all, he corrected. Enough to create space, enough to prevent utter ruin. Why? She said, stunned. You owe us nothing. Because I choose to, he said. Because your father's folly is not solely his own. Others encouraged it. Because I cannot bear to see you suffer for mistakes you did not make, and because my feelings for you did not vanish because you pushed me away. Emotion surged through her, half gratitude, half pain. This is charity, she whispered. No, he said sharply. Charity is coin tossed to strangers for the sake of one's conscience. This is investment, injustice, in you. His gaze gentled. In us, if you will allow it. Us, she repeated faintly. He took a measured breath. I told you before, I am not a man given to romantic flourishes, but the weeks without you have made me realize something. I do not want a future in which you are merely a regret. I would rather face scandal beside you than be applauded among people whose values I despise. Her eyes filled. You would tie yourself to our disgrace. Your disgrace? He said. I see none, your father's perhaps, but you have done nothing wrong. You have been placed in an impossible position and borne it with more grace than most men I know. He lifted his hands slightly, then let them drop. I respect you. I admire you. And, difficult as it is for me to say it, I have come to care for you. Deeply. A tear slipped free. You said you could not promise a poet's love. I still cannot, he said. I do not think in verse, but I can promise this, that I will stand with you when society whispers, that I will shoulder your burdens as you have shouldered your family's, that I will not punish you for being honest with me. I can promise loyalty, patience, and whatever affection a man like me is capable of growing. And my pride, she whispered. Your pride, he said softly, is one of the things I value most. I do not want a wife who comes to me broken. I want a partner who stands beside me. I believe that can be you, if you will let both your pride and your heart have a say. The room was very quiet. The clocks ticked. Faint street sounds drifted from outside. Harriet felt as though she were poised once more on that thin ice, but this time the water below did not look quite so dark. If I accept you now, she said slowly, people will say you married me out of obligation, pity, stubborn honor. They will, he agreed. Let them. And you will not resent it? She asked. I am not marrying people, he said. I am marrying you. They may think what they like. We will know the truth, that we chose each other knowing exactly what we were doing. She studied him. The tired lines, the steadiness, the vulnerability he'd allowed her to glimpse. The man who had not run, who had involved himself in the unpleasant work of sorting through her father's debts, who had returned even after she refused him. "You are a stubborn man, Your Grace," she said, her voice unsteady. "Loxley," he corrected quietly. "Loxley," she repeated, the word a bridge. "If I say yes, it will be partly because you are a lifeline. I would be lying if I pretended otherwise. But it will also be because when I think of my future, I do not want to face it without you. You have become important to me, exasperating, inflexible, and important." His shoulders eased just slightly. "Is that your answer?" "Yes," she said. "If you will still have me, ruined name, complicated pride and all, I will marry you." A long, slow exhale left him, as if he'd been holding his breath for days. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You will not regret it." "I expect I shall," she said, managing a trembling smile. "You are notoriously difficult." "The same has been said of you," he replied. They both laughed, shaky and a little astonished. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. He bowed over them, brushing his lips against her knuckles, a gesture more solemn than passionate, and all the more binding for it. "I will speak with your father," he said. "We will devise a plan. It will not be easy, but it will be possible." "For the first time," Harriet said softly, "possible sounds like enough." Society gasped when the engagement was announced. Some declared Loxley mad, others praised his nobility. A few insisted the Selwyn girl had entrapped him. Men speculated about debts and settlements. Women dissected Harriet's every appearance. Harriet heard the whispers and found, to her surprise, that they hurt less than she'd feared. She had made her choice with her eyes open. Loxley, true to his word, did not flinch. He walked into drawing rooms at her side with deliberate calm. When someone made a cutting remark within his hearing, he replied with such cold precision that word quickly spread. The Duke of Loxley would tolerate insults to his future Duchess no more than he would treachery in his own staff. Behind the scenes, he and his solicitor unravelled the worst knots of Selwyn's finances. Some debts were restructured, others challenged, a few paid off from Loxley's reserves. Ashdown Park was not lost. It was placed under firm management until its revenues could recover. Lord Selwyn, humbled, accepted guidance. Lady Selwyn, once she stopped weeping long enough to comprehend what had happened, alternated between tearful gratitude and excited talk of grandchildren. On the morning of her wedding, Harriet stood before the mirror in an ivory silk gown, fingers pressed to the pulse at her throat. She felt oddly calm. The frightened debutante of the Ashbourne ball felt like another person. In the small, elegant chapel Loxley had chosen, private, dignified, not ostentatious, the air smelled of beeswax and flowers. When she walked up the aisle on her father's arm, she met Loxley's gaze. There was no distance in it now, no cool assessment, only steady welcome and a hint of something warmer, still growing. They spoke the vows. Harriet felt each word settle inside her like a stone in a foundation, solid and intentional. When it was done, and they stepped out into the pale sunshine while petals fluttered around them, Loxley offered his arm. "Are you ready, Duchess?" he asked softly. The new title might have felt like a costume once. Now it felt like a responsibility she chose. "Yes," she said, and meant it. "With you, I am." They walked together toward the waiting carriage. The future ahead of them was not a fairy tale. There would be work and disagreements, society's pettiness, and the lingering consequence of past mistakes. But they would face it side by side, a duke who had chosen integrity over reputation, and a debutante who had learned that pride and love did not have to be enemies. They could stand together, and that, Harriet thought, as the carriage door closed and Loxley's hand remained firmly in hers, was the happiest ending she could have asked for. The end. Thank you, dear reader of the Regency Gazette, for joining us in another tale of love, intrigue, and whispered ballroom secrets. If today's romance delighted you, kindly bestow a like upon this video. It helps our Gazette reach more lovers of Regency storytelling. For weekly journeys into dukes, debutantes, scandals, and slow-burning devotion, please subscribe to the Gazette and tap the little bell so you are notified the moment the next story is published. Until our next edition, may your days be filled with grace and your nights with the promise of romance.